red to the tissue B. Tissue B is just like a light pink. Okay, let's make sure, oops, our brush is clean, because I don't want any of the A1 getting into my tissue. I'm using two brushes here, one for the pink and one for the fluorescent. Turn that blue a little bit green. Okay, so the fluorescent I'm going to be adding to these white areas here. Although the liquid looks green in the well here, it comes out a little bit blue. So just dab it slightly. This will just create some kind of fluorescence on your occlusal table. This stage I'm not waiting for it to pool up or anything, I'm just adding a really, really thin layer. So all these areas that are left unstained, I'll be adding the fluorescent. Now that the fluorescent's been added, go back to my tissue B, and I'm going to fill in these areas. Putting the pink here is just going to give you depth. Yeah, I'll let it infiltrate a little bit more because the frame is so thick. We are nearly done. The underside, you can infiltrate it whatever color you want. I like making it pink, but there's no reason you can't make it an A1, A2, whatever color you like to play around with. Adding this, I'm pretty rough. There's no thought that really goes into this. It is underneath on the fitting surface, so I'm just randomly adding. I'm not going to be concerned if it doesn't infiltrate 100%. The thing with the acids are, it's very corrosive, so our next step is we're going to place this under a drying lamp for at least 90 minutes. The purpose of that is to completely dry out all the acid so it evaporates, and what this helps is that it doesn't eat into the elements of the sintering oven. If you had to put this straight into your sinter oven without drying it out, your elements are not going to last too long. I've had my oven since 2009, and by making sure I dry this out every time, I haven't had to replace them yet. So that's 2009, it's nearly 5 years. Okay, we're ready to go to the drying lamp. The last step is to place this frame under this drying lamp. Like I said before, the purpose of that is these acids are very, very corrosive, and we want to make sure that we just dry out the acids completely before we put it into the sintering oven. If we don't do that, the acids will completely erode the heating elements in the sintering oven. So all we're going to do is just let it sit under this drying lamp for 90 minutes. At the halfway mark, I might just turn it around so that we can do it 50-50 on both sides. So let it sit there for 90 minutes, and then we'll take it over to put into the sintering oven. Now this has been under the drying lamp for 90 minutes. We're going to use this great GC sintering oven. It is a huge thing. What I like to do is I use this refractory material just to, I'll put a little bit under the base. The last thing, this thing is just so top heavy, so it just helps me stabilize it. It just makes it nice and secure. And then we're going to take this ceramic hood and just carefully place that over the top. It's a little bit nerve-wracking doing that. What the hood does is it just helps isolate the heat, gives it a more constant temperature, and it protects the heating elements from the acids. So we're going to leave this here till tomorrow morning, and I'm sure it's going to look great. Okay, so here we are in the morning. This is after a 13-hour sintering cycle. As you can see, this is pretty much room temperature. I can pick it up with my hands, and it's sintered beautifully. It's 13 hours at 1450 and cool down to room temperature, and we have success. Now this has come directly out of the sintering oven. It's still warm to the touch, and the goal now is going to be cut this base from the frame. I'll set my handpiece to about 5,000 revolutions per minute. I do not want to generate heat here. Now, as this will be the only time that I actually will be grinding on the frame, on the zirconia part, the other times will just be layering porcelain and grinding on that area. I'm going to start cutting. I use a Sunshine disk from, obviously, Sunshine. It's a diamond impregnated disk. I've been using it for years. It's, in my opinion, it's the best disk on the market. It is extremely coarse, and at a low speed, it generates very little heat. So we're going to start at one section. I'm going to just cut a little bit, move on to the next one. The reason I'm going to move is that I do not want to generate heat. So by just staggering it, I let it cool down and move on to the next part. And we just keep doing this back and forth. If you generate heat, any spot heat, it'll induce a crack, and it will cause the frame to generate a nice crack. So the goal here is to try and keep these areas as cool as possible. This is going to take some time, but I rather want to be safe than sorry. Now that we've cut off the base, I like to use these diamond impregnated stones. And the reason is, as the zirconia is a really, really poor conductor of heat, just like I used the diamond impregnated cutting disc, the stone generates very, very little heat. Now this is the last time I'll be grinding on the zirconia itself. My goal is just to remove these tags, and once again I set my handpiece to 5,000 revolutions per minute. I'm going to use the same strategy as when cutting off the base. I'll grind a spot, let it cool, and move on to the next. I do not want to generate heat. It's going to be very time consuming, but once I've done grinding these off, I will not have to grind on the zirconia again. You have to have a lot of patience for this. It's unbelievably time consuming, but it's well worth the efforts. How long that took to grind these holding tags off, the little buttons. Zirconia is extremely hard. So that just verifies why yesterday we had to spend so much time in the green state getting this 90 to 100% where we want it to be. Because if I had to go and try and grind in texture here and deepen the anatomy, it's just not happening. So I do as much work as I can in the green state. So when I get to this, all I have to do is cut these buttons off, and that's the last time I'll be grinding on the zirconia. Our next step will be to create a bond and show you how to layer. This is our next stage. My main goal here is to create a bond between the zirconia and the layered ceramic. I've found we get many questions of people complaining that the ceramic is chipping or debonding from the framework. So we are dealing with a huge structure here. It's going to take a lot of heat. You're going to have to bump up your high temperature. And the main problem is from chipping and debonding is we are not developing a bond between the zirconia and the layered ceramic. Now, what has worked really successful for me for many years is using glaze, or what I use now is Lustre paste, to create this bond. Now, normally in the manual it says you have to fire your layering ceramic at 810, but because this is such a huge structure, it's going to absorb a lot of heat, so I would recommend something like this. We start at a high temp of 850. That is 40 degrees higher than what the manual says. And please remember, the manual refers to single units. It's not referring to this 14-unit frame that we're dealing with. So I've taken some of the Lustre paste neutral and dispense it on my tray, and all I'm going to do is just apply it to where I want to layer. So I'm applying my Lustre paste neutral to the areas that I've already cut back in the green stage and now sintered. And as you can see from the sintering and the infiltration of the color, we already have a really nice body to start layering from. My goal here is just to add incisal, so there's no need to use any dentines or any kind of body. All we're going to do is add an incisal. So I use this the old Vita brush, a little squirrel hair brush. You can use anything similar to this. Just dip it into my fluorescent dentine 92, and I just start sprinkling the ceramic powder onto the Lustre paste. Now you want to let it just sit here for a few minutes so that the Lustre paste can absorb the dry ceramic. And once that is, we'll do a test. All I'm going to do is just tap this and blow off the excess. And there you have a beautiful sprinkled porcelain on top of that Lustre paste. We've added the fluorescent dentine 92 to the layered area, and I'm hoping that will give us the nice B2 foundation that we need to lay our incisal on. Now obviously we're going to be layering the gum tissue on this area here, so I want to create a bond for that ceramic. I'm going to use just the Lustre paste neutral and coat it on these highlighted areas where I have the A1, where I infiltrated the frame with A1. You could use the Lustre paste, the value paste over here as well, and that'll just give you a higher value on top of this root eminence, and that'll just help that element shine through the pink tissue and create a natural root effect. So in the A1 areas, I'm using the neutral today. Add it in between where we've infiltrated on the frame with the tissue B. All this pink's going to do is just obviously create a bond, but give us the effect of more depth and a richer color for when we layer the gum shades on top of this. So we're killing two birds with one stone here. You could be creative and use the entire kit of Lustre paste, whatever color you would like to use. Blue, you can put some grays. If you wanted to make these A1 areas darker, use the A range. It is really a helpful tool to have, not only creating bond, but you're creating these beautiful effects. I did not add on these areas. And the same applies to the palatal side. Obviously here I'm just going to add neutral. So there we go. We have on the number 6 to 11 Lustre paste and sprinkled FD92. I've applied Lustre neutral to the root eminence here, pink on the sides of that to create an illusion of depth and just warm it up, and then Lustre paste neutral on the palatal side. Now, a really important thing to remember is that this zirconia has a very, very poor ability to conduct heat. So my fail-safe technique is I use a heat rate of 25 degrees per minute to high temperature, which in this case will be 850 degrees Celsius. I hold on this bond bake, I'll hold for 1 minute, and then I'm going to do a 25 degree cool down to 300 degrees Celsius. And only then, at 300, will I remove the frame from the platform and let it cool down to room temperature. And once I can pick it up with my hands, I start working on it again. I cannot overemphasize that you follow this, because any higher heat rate or faster cooling rate, I can guarantee you the frame will crack. I've been using the 25 climb and 25 cool for many years, and so far 0 cracks. But before that, when I used to change from that 25, I had a few cases that cracks would appear. So I'm going to go through this process in a picture format just one more time. Goal here is to create a bond between the zirconia and the layering ceramic. Like I said before, this is a really, really vital piece of information, is how to create this bond. We get many, many technicians that are complaining that the layering ceramic is debonding from the structure, and this is 100% a cause of the high temp is not high enough and we haven't created a bond. So what I use is Lustre paste neutral. I'm going to add the Lustre paste neutral to the areas 6 to 11, where I'll be layering my incisal. I start applying the neutral just with a normal regular brush. Here you can see 6 to 11 is completely coated with luster paste neutral. It's generously applied. What I'm trying to achieve here is a B2 shade, and the zirconia has although it is a high translucency, it still has a little bit of opacity to it, and I want to enrich the chroma. So what I'm going to choose here is FD92. It's a fluorescent dentine, and on this picture coming up you'll see that the FD more or less complements the B2 shade. Here's the FD92. My technique is I'll take a squirrel hair brush, I'll dip it into the ceramic, and I sprinkle the ceramic onto the luster paste. I'll let it sit there for at least 2-3 minutes so that the paste can absorb the dry ceramic powder. And this is a picture of afterwards. We've tapped off the excess and we have a nice uniform layer of sprinkled FD92. I'm going to take the luster paste neutral, the luster paste 7, which is pink, and I'm going to use this to create a bond on my gingival area. The luster paste neutral is coated on and highlighted on the root eminence with the A1 color. I infiltrated that area with the A1 in the green stage. And in between the A1s, I can take some of the L7, the pink, and just enrich the infiltrated frame and create illusion of depth and just some warmth. The purpose of this picture is just to illustrate where I've created the bond. I've placed the frame under a drying lamp, and this gives you a really good picture to see exactly where the luster paste is dried out, and we've created a bond uniformly everywhere. Now, the manual from GC would recommend that your first bake should be at 810. We cannot use this, as this is formatted just for single units. We're dealing with a huge structure. The frame is extremely heavy and bulky, and it's going to absorb a lot of heat. On this case, I'd recommend that you would hire the high temp at least 40 degrees. So my first firing would be in the 850 range. Here we have a slide of the regular firing temperature for a single unit. We start at 400. We have a 6-minute dry time. The vacuum would kick in at 450. We have a 45-degree climb to a high temp of 810. 1 minute hold, and then would cool down to 450 at a regular speed. Because we're dealing with a huge bulky zirconia frame, and the reason that the zirconia is a really poor conductor of heat, we cannot use the firing cycle that the manual recommends. The following slide would show my custom cycle. We start at 400 degrees again, a 10-minute drying time. Vacuum would be the same, would start at 450, but we have to decrease the heat rate by 25 degrees. The original was 20 degrees. The original is 45. My recommended heat rate would be 25 degrees per minute. So it would climb from 450 all the way up to 850 at 25 degrees per minute. We do not have to have a long hold here because of the slow heat rate. I recommend a 10-second hold, and then from the high temp of 850, you want to cool it down to 400 to 300 or 350 at 25 degrees per minute. This is an extremely long cycle. You're looking in the range of 40 to 50 minutes, but it's well worthwhile. Here we have the frame directly after fire. You can see in the number 6 to 11 area, We have a beautiful shiny effect, the Lustre paste and the sprinkled FD92, and in the gingival area the Lustre paste neutral and the L7 pink. It is nice and shiny, that it gives me a great indication that the height tempo is correct, and it will be suitable for the layering ceramic. And here's a picture of the B2 shade guide, and just illustrates that we've got a great foundation to layer our incisals. My first step would be to take the clear fluorescent. I'm going to layer this on the root areas with the A1 neck. The idea here is just I want the A1 root eminence to shine through the gingival, the pink gingival that I'll be layering on top of that. So by coating the root with the clear, it creates the effect that the root shines through. I continue in this on all the root areas. I bring in the gum base dark, layer that over the clear, and on the palatal side. My next step is to bring in the gum base light, complete the entire gum tissue with the gum base light, and create rugae on the palatal and finish off with the gum base light. My next step is to use the fluorescent dentine 92 again. I just wanted to create some more warmth in the mamelon area, so I just layered some basic mamelon structure with the FD92, and I follow my same firing cycle as before. This is directly after fire. We can see the beautiful root eminence coming through in the neck area. Our FD92 has been fired. And once again, this is the indication. What I'm looking for, I want to make sure that we're firing at the right height temperature. What I see here is the ceramically is beautiful, it's shiny. This is an indication that my height temp is correct. If it was more opacious and grainy, I would know that we're firing too low, and I would have to go up 5 or 10 degrees. We're going to do a basic layering system here. I'm going to use the enamel 58, enamel opal 2, clear, and a little bit of cervical transparent number 24. The orange area is layered with the cervical transparent. I'm going to create a shell of clear. It's going to give me an illusion of depth and vitality to my structure. I continue on with the clear. I'm going to take some enamel opal 2 and layer it on the line angles of the tooth. Another picture showing the red areas, enamel opal 2. This is just going to highlight my line angles. And to finish off layering is enamel 58. I'm going to apply a shell entirely over the entire structure. see how it's completed layering. And once again, I'm going to fire at 850. This will be initially my first bake as far as the mass bulk of layering is concerned. And this is directly after firing. I had a little bit of shrinkage here, the sign that my dry time was not enough. Had to come in with a second bake. I added some cervical transparent number 24 again, just to fill in the areas, and completed with enamel 58. Here we have the frame directly after our first build up, basically the first fire. I'm going to do my second bake. Once again, add the cervical transparent to the neck area, cervical transparent 24. This time I'm just going to finish off with the incisal 58. Side view of the incisal 58 to complete my second bake. And once again, I'm going to fire at 850 again. I want to make sure I don't underfire. My first and second bake has been at 850. This is a view directly after the second fire or the second bake. I'm going to complete the gum tissue at this stage. What I'm adding now is intensive cream over the neck area. Completely layered the intensive cream and started to create the effects of the tissue. As a third bake, I'm going to just do some final corrections on the incisal areas of my anteriors, which were missing from the second bake. Once again there, I'll use enamel 58. At this bake, my third bake, I would drop down to 840. That's 10 degrees lower from the first and second firings. And this is directly after firing and after I've ground and worked it off with diamonds and rubber wheels. Just a black and white view. Our following procedure would be to stain up the monolithic posteriors. Go back. I'm going to use the A shade from the in-over kit. Dispense some of the A shade onto my stain palette. And I'll coat a thin layer of the A shade just in the cervical area so that we get a transition and a nice warm color in the neck area. I'm going to complete that A shade throughout the arch. My next step is to use some of the Lustre paste. In this slide, we're using Lustre paste, the value paste, and over here I'm going to just coat a thin layer onto the cusp tips. Completed with the value paste, we'll add this to the occlusal area, and at the same time we'll use a bit of the Lustre paste 2, which is a white, and we'll highlight the lobes to create an illusion of translucency on the monolithic. We can use a little bit of the L6, which is a blue Lustre paste. You want to just use very, very small amounts to create that illusion of translucency. Now at this stage I'm going to fire at 780. That's 70 degrees lower from my first bake. Why I do this is that I do not want my layered porcelain I do not want to lose texture. So by firing at 780, I'm still able to set my stains and fire my luster paste without affecting the layered area. This is directly after the stain and firing. As you can see, the layered area has got a beautiful natural glaze, and the texture has not been affected. At this stage, I'm going to create some texture into my gum tissue. I use this technique. I'll paint some luster paste onto the tissue. Here the slide just demonstrates luster paste applied throughout the tissue. The same sprinkle technique I used in the anterior region to create the bond. I'm going to sprinkle some clear fluorescent powder onto the luster paste. The sprinkled powder throughout the frame. Some sprinkled powder on the palatal. And this is with a view of the powder. I just blew it off and tapped off the excess. A palatal view. At this stage, I'll take some stain liquid and distilled water, and I mix that 50-50 into a little spray bottle. The idea now is to spray this spray of stain liquid and distilled water onto that sprinkled area. And as you can see, as you're spraying this on, it starts to give this stippled effect on the ceramic that has been sprinkled on. Now at the same time, I'm going to finish off the monolithic posteriors with some neutral luster paste. You want to apply a very thin layer and spread it evenly throughout the body of the tooth. This is just a view we have to show the luster paste that has been put under a drying lamp, and to show that you've got an even coated surface entirely across the crown. This will be my final bake. Once again, we're going to fire at 780 or 710, sorry, 770. This is directly after fire, and you can see the tissue effect of the sprinkled ceramic on the tissue area. Obviously, this is very coarse. My next step is to take a rubber wheel and to start rubbing our rubber wheel the tissue. This is the effect we get after the rubber wheel was applied. It gives you a beautiful natural stipple effect. And here we have our final frame, 100% layered on the tissue area, and a nice natural glaze from 6 to 11 with the monolithic posteriors with luster glaze, luster paste.